Ho 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 ho. I'd ask the same of you. Gunther and Footman eyed each other, and in the next moment, they flew out of the burial chamber. They had their own battle to fight, and collateral damage wasn't remotely a concern to them. Louis and Gunther can be so annoying. They're normally so calm and composed, but when the time comes to battle, they simply cannot hold back their thirst for blood. But I suppose the same can be said of me. Granville, just you wait. Even with your stout ally, you'll find it impossible to stop me. Luminous, too, had her eyes sharpened upon Maria, the fleeting, silent figure. A corpse? It couldn't be, she continued, almost whispering to herself. I see Granville still hasn't given up. Maria is dead. Even with resurrection, the miracle of my God, nothing can be done for a soul already lost. And now look. The figure before her wasn't Maria at all. It was something in the shape of her. But very well. Allow me to perform your last rites. Her aura blazing around her, Luminous stood up, and with that, she and Maria began fighting at a level beyond what a normal person could even observe. Would the winner be Luminous or this thing taking the shape of Maria? And then, the ark was left behind in the chamber. Everyone had left the room, not wanting to damage it. And as if waiting for that exact moment, a lone boy appeared in the darkness. Ha ha ha. I didn't think it'd go this much to plan. Granville was absolutely right. It was Yuki laughing. Never accepting Granville's information at face value, he had remained in the shadows as he followed the intruders in. He had successfully shrouded his presence to all, even deceiving Luminous. He usually kept himself at least a little bit detectable, so he'd be ready if things ever went south. A lot of people could detect his presence that way, and once those adversaries presumed they had the upper hand, that made it easy to put them off their guard. Yuki was always pursuing that strategy. His accumulated experiences were paying off in vital situations, including this very one, and now they let him obtain what he wanted with practically no work at all. So this is the Ark? He reached out, touching that beautiful coffin of ice. Whoa! So that's what makes it a holy coffin? Matter made out of pure spiritual particles. I didn't know you could do that. Now he was glad he came. He wasn't sure anyone besides him could even lay a hand on this thing. Even a magic burning coffin couldn't affect anti-skill, and that made it perfectly possible for Yuki to make off with this Arkansas. Then, without another moment of hesitation, he smashed it open. The hidden treasure Luminous worked so hard to protect shattered all too easily. Slumbering inside it was a beautiful young woman, the hero everyone was after, no doubt. Ooh, there's a seal on this girl's body as well? Not that it'll work on me, but I can deactivate it later, I guess. Yuki chuckled. They certainly tried to be careful. A barrier more powerful than the Ark itself covered the girl's skin from head to toe. He could take his time removing it once he was back to safety. As he made this decision, Yuki's eyes turned toward the girl's face. Who is this girl anyway? She seems vaguely familiar, but nah. It can't be that. She looked to be around 16, and while her long dark silver hair hid her privates, she didn't have a stitch of clothing on her. I guess this is technically assault or something like that, but not much I can do there. With that whisper, Yuki hefted the girl's body up. Well, I've got my hero. Now to flee the scene. With one more sly grin, Yuki quickly left the chamber. Why is there a hero sleeping in an Ark anyway? Is she really the ultimate weapon Granville called her? And what does Granville even want? Yuki was a skeptical young man by nature, but given his rash opinion of his almost excessive talents, he often figured things would work out in the end. That was what his pride did for him, and thus, despite his doubts, he signed on for Granville's operation, but at this point in time, he had no idea what kind of situation his actions were about to cause. The otherworlders lurched upon me like zombies. Carefully, I neutralized them one by one, making sure not to kill any. With my powers, not even 100 of these at once would give me a challenge, but undoing the locking curses on them all was a pain. Still, I couldn't help but wonder about these otherworlders. I focused my mind upon them for a bit, And yes, they definitely packed a lot of magicules. They had real physical skill, too, some of them could even manage an A rank. But for some reason, they didn't seem particularly strong to me. I thought that was just the difference in talent at first, but something told me that wasn't the whole story. I was sure Granville's robbing their freedom was one other reason, but was there something else? Understood. In this battle, no adversary has used any unique skills so far. Aha. That was it. And it made sense to me. None of these guys were using any kind of special attack, and that made neutralizing them pretty straightforward work. But would a group of otherworlders this big really have no uniques at all? Or were they going easy on me? Either way, it was kind of creepy. Of course, no matter what Granville was planning, I'd just beat him, and we'd be done with it. That was the plan I had in mind as I turned my attention toward the last one of them. She still looked like a young girl to me, maybe a bit past 10, her power would have just barely stabilized by that age. Like the others, she was intensely powerful, but that was it. With a now practiced hand, I undid the lock on her, no problems there. She was conscious again and looking thoroughly confused, but there was no time to explain matters. Putting her to sleep for the time being, I laid her down where I had placed the others. There were a few kids like her in the group, which made things seriously difficult for me. Granville didn't seem to care much about how he looked in the midst of this, but regardless, I managed to take care of them all. I'm assuming he was just looking to buy some time. If I wanted to, it would have been quicker and easier to just kill 'em all. Along those lines, I guess it's mission accomplished for him. Still, the other worlders attacking me were now neutralized. I don't know what he wanted to do with the time he earned, but once I ended this battle, it wouldn't matter anyway. I glanced across the battlefield to see how things were going. The children were safe, which was a relief. Meanwhile, despite it all, Batten and his orchestra were still starting to practice their music. They had nerves of steel, I guess, or something of steel. I suppose focusing on something is a good way to calm your anxieties, though, so maybe it wasn't that crazy after all. Hinata, meanwhile, was fighting on an even keel with Granville. I had to hand it to her. It was literally a supersonic contest, an advanced back and forth where no one could afford a single mistake. If I stepped in without a plan, I could destroy the balance and inadvertently turn the tide of the battle. Better save that for later. Shion and Ranga were being pushed back by Raziel, but it didn't look like they were that badly outclassed. Shion was taking Raziel's attacks, but as she did, she was swiftly healing herself each time. Ultra-speed regeneration really was like cheating, it was easily enough to make up a difference like this one. Ranga, meanwhile, was concentrating on offense, diving into Shion's shadow and sniping away when he found a blind spot, throwing in magic like death-calling wind and dark lightning. I was impressed with his nimble performance, the only problem was that none of it worked on Raziel. I mean, Raziel's just insane. I recalled that if he's an insectoid, that put him in the same family as a Pito and Sejin. Their segmented eyes meant they had no blind spots, making it easy for him to dodge Ranga's surprise attacks, and besides, most regular attacks didn't faze him at all. What I thought was black armor was actually an exoskeleton harder than steel. He could simply lift up his left arm and stop Shion's large sword in its tracks. Unless you aimed for his joints, you likely had no chance of damaging him. Even worse, judging by the way Ranga's magic bounced off him, his surface must have had a magic interference style effect applied. No wonder he gave Diablo trouble. Magic was Diablo's main thing, so I could see why he wasn't the greatest matchup for Raziel, although I think he'd still manage a win. Given his edge against both physical and magic attacks, Raziel was a serious threat. And someone this amazing was just meekly serving Granville, with no ambitions of his own? Well, as much of a challenge as he posed to Shion and Ranga, I figured I could handle him. So I was about to head over there, and then I steeled myself as I turned toward the cathedral. I wasn't alone. Hinata, Shion, and the others did the same, looking nervous. I think we were all justified. After all, the demon Lord Leon, a guy who should never have been here, was standing in front of it. He wore a white robe, a nice-looking, knightly suit of golden armor underneath. Handsome as always, to be sure, but he looked very peeved at the moment. And he wasn't alone, several knights were stationed behind him, and by the looks of it, they were hand-picked from his top officials. What's he doing here? Is he friend or foe? I found it hard to picture him as an ally, but I really hoped he wouldn't decide to fight us. Ah, you're here, Demon Lord Leon? And, Hinata, you must be finding this terribly boring if you're turning away from our battle. Granville sounded more like the bored one. He seemed totally unfazed, standing composed and not trying to sneak an attack on Hinata right now, although, of course, if he tried something so underhanded, he could have been walking right into her trap anyway. With this high level of battle, you'd never be crowned the victor unless you overpowered your foe with a frontal attack. Either way, though, Granville clearly knew Leon was coming, his casual tone proved it. They had to be in cahoots. Aren't you being a little too friendly with me? Who are you? Ah yes, we haven't met in person before. You've been very good to the children I've collected. I'm sorry to make you take time out to come here. Wait, they're not in cahoots? Because it sounded like this was Leon and Granville's first meeting. It could be an act, but... Oh, and speaking of which, a lot of the other worlders I just fought against looked no older than middle schoolers. Was that what Granville was talking about? What do you mean by that? I have no business with you, I came here to... I'm the one who summoned the children with the spells you taught me, you realize. Are you going to claim ignorance? Aren't you using unstable otherworlder children to bring yourself more elementalists? Warriors as powerful as Shizu Aizawa herself? It was like someone punched me in the head. Hinata lowered her own sword, eyes darting between Granville and Leon. Report. Danger. The subject Granville Rotso is using wordplay in an attempt to pit you against the Demon Lord Leon. I had a hunch. Clearly Granville's plan, however misguided, was to antagonize Leon as much as possible. It'd be a terrible idea to lend much credence to anything he said. And yet... How many failures do you think we had to endure to call over all the people you wanted? That's what those people are. The cast-offs. And yet, I just couldn't ignore that. Shizu was summoned by Leon, then cast aside by him. And she wasn't alone, Leon had reportedly summoned many other children. That was an unforgivable crime, is that true? Very true, indeed, Demon Lord Rimuru. As merchants, it's our job to provide whatever merchandise our customers demand. Granville's manner of speech irritated me. I wasn't even asking him. The providers need to have ethics, too. Throwing all the blame on the consumer went against my creed. But even ahead of that, there was something else I wanted to confirm. So, you summoned other people, too? Not just Shizu? Yes. Even when you knew that children subjected to unstable summonings have drastically shortened lifespans? That was. Leon was about to say something, only to be interrupted by a roaring, echoing laugh. Granville was the source of it. He he he. Ha 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 ha. Don't make me laugh, Leon. Aren't you the one who explicitly asked me to provide otherworlder children no older than 10 years? Instead of attempting to subjugate the stable summons, you found it easier to make the unstable ones feel they owed you their lives, didn't you? And you used them as weapons. Through the taunts, Granville's goals were clear. He knew I could be a soft-hearted pushover, and he was attempting to milk that as much as he could, fanning my do-gooder attitude and trying to make me despise Leon. The thing was, his words were convincing. If Leon's aim was to implant elemental spirits into children, then Granville was right, they needed to be unstable. And maybe that was why I detected exactly those sorts of elementals within Leon's underlings here. Is that true? Yes. But there's a reason for. Shut up. You're the cause of all this. With that shout, I started running toward Leon. I just had to go and give him a wallop, or I wouldn't be able to contain myself. I knew full well I was playing into Granville's hands, but I just couldn't contain my rage for Leon any longer. I can hear his reasons later. First things first, I had to vent my anger. So with everything I had, I struck at Leon. He didn't move. All he did was raise a hand to keep his troops at bay, staring directly at me. Was he that confident, or? Leaving my accelerating thoughts in the dust, my fist drew closer and closer to him. He didn't move. Target shows no signs of countering you. It will be a direct strike. There was no trap in the end. My punch thundered against Leon's right cheek. Happy now? My full power was in that, but apparently it didn't damage Leon much. I must have cut his lip, because he felt obliged to take out a handkerchief to wipe up some blood, but his composure was fully retained. PFFT. I know I wasn't using any skill there, but maybe I underestimated him a little. Still, that punch taught me one thing. This guy, the Demon Lord Leon, was more good-natured than I thought. He had no obligation to take that punch, but he shed all his defenses and took it anyway, and that proved it. He came across as cold and unfeeling, but maybe he wasn't such a bad guy, actually. Shizu didn't hate him, after all. She tried to, but as she put it, she just couldn't, and it was her final desire in life to figure out what Leon's motivations were. Of course, I didn't need Raphael's warning. I was calm from the beginning. I made a promise with Shizu, a promise that I'd take the feelings she left behind and shove them in Leon's face. And I was fully ready to take advantage of today for that. Leon had to have some reason for what he did. I could decide later whether to forgive him. As entangled as things were today, making a foe out of Leon as well would be suicidal. Getting emotional like this wasn't the shrewdest plan. He was no ally of mine, but he was no enemy, either, and now that I knew that, I had to speak up. Not yet, no. That was my way of expressing Shizu's feelings, but I still need to show you mine. Let's talk about things in depth right now. So will he pick up on my intention here? I noticed an eyebrow twitch up. That's a relief. He's not such a fool after all. So, great. Let's talk it out, then, our plans for how to deal with Granville. With that in mind, I readied my sword in Leon's direction. He was a dead ringer for Shizu in her youth. There was no pigmentation, his skin was smooth, his hair shining like each individual strand had its own glow. He couldn't be described as looking Asian now, but he still retained Shizu's core features, making them all the more beautiful. Now his golden eyes were trained upon Leon, his pink lips speaking to him. Not yet, no. That was my way of expressing Shizu's feelings, but I still need to show you mine. Let's talk about things in depth right now. Such were the words of Rimuru, and Leon immediately understood. I see. He wants to take advantage of this situation. We barely know each other, and he's decided to trust me without a moment's doubt? He's more stout-hearted than I expected. But, Leon thought, he liked that. Rimuru seemed to be driven by emotion right now, but apparently that was all part of his calculations, his way of determining, in this chaotic battlefield, exactly who was friend and who was foe. I always knew I couldn't let my guard down around him, but at times like these, I'm glad he's around. He took his own blade up from his hip, holding it forward. As he took the Dragon airship here, Leon was briefed about an emergency magical call from Cerberus. It seemed one of his agents had fallen out of contact, and there was a chance someone had blown their cover. Exactly who found this agent out, they didn't know. Maybe it was the Demon Lord Rimuru, maybe one of the 5 elders. Maybe even the Crusaders, for all he knew. With the agent captured, and no further information available, nearly everyone was a suspect. Of course, Leon wasn't gullible enough to fully trust Cerberus. There was a plausible chance they were hatching an elaborate scheme to deceive him. But one thing was certain, being here right now, in this holy space, was akin to walking into a trap. And yet Leon couldn't stay away. Even if this is a trap, if I find Chloe here, no matter how much danger it entailed, Leon would never care. And now, crossing swords with Rimuru, Leon was finally serene again. He looked around, surveying the area. The scene was shockingly chaotic. It was difficult to determine who was on which side. The elite magic knights guarding him had been dragged into the fray while he wasn't paying attention. They had been lured into opening hostilities with some of the local defense forces. Keep yourselves defended. Do not kill the enemy. Yes, sir. Now seemed like an opportune time to give Arlos the Silver Knight some orders. He did so via an anonymous magical call, but there was every chance someone would eavesdrop on it. That's why he kept the order to something that wouldn't cause problems later. Regardless, Leon was the intruder here. To the demon Lord Luminous, he was an uninvited guest, and it wouldn't surprise him if she decided to retaliate. If she did, he wanted to retain as much of an advantage as possible while keeping the dead to a minimum. But where is Luminous? Leon and Rimuru were fighting near the cathedral entrance while the paladin captain, Hinata, and Granville were a short distance away. Farther afield, Shion and Ranga, both present at the last Walpurgis, were in pitched combat against the insectoid Raziel. Luminous, the master of these sacred lands, would never allow open warfare here, and yet, she was missing, and if someone like Luminous were pinned down elsewhere, that was seriously bad news. To Leon, this entire situation was nothing short of nonsensical, but as he looked over matters, he could see where the trap was. Someone, he didn't know who, was trying to goad him into fighting the demon Lord Rimuru. What this someone didn't expect, and what Leon was lucky enough to see, is that Rimuru wasn't so easily hoodwinked. Now Rimuru was attempting to take advantage of that to gain control of things. I see. So he's the one behind all this? Very well. Might as well try trusting you. It was a rarity for someone as wary as him, but for once in his life, Leon decided to meekly trust in Rimuru. Leon wasn't the only one thoroughly confused. Hinata was having similar trouble dealing with this rapidly changing battlefield. But even worse than that, her opponent Granville was starting to seem eerily different. Finding it odd that you can't steal my skills? Question mark. He had guessed right. It made Hinata nervous, despite herself. Humph. Why the surprise? Did you think I never picked up on your secret? A little observation, and it was easy enough to surmise. Why do you think I had the other 6 fighting in front of me? Ah. I see. Hinata's unique skill Usurper gave her a decisive advantage against the most powerful of foes, and yet it assessed Granville as inapplicable. Previously, Granville definitely was above her, and whenever they trained, she constantly used Usurper until it succeeded, seizing, or more accurately at the time, copying, his skills. You have some way of taking skills and arts from opponents, do you not? But I imagine that only works once on the same foe, and you've already taken from me, haven't you? So it won't work twice. That couldn't be. Hinata found herself reacting to Granville's statement, and then she realized her mistake. Heh. So I was right? Hinata, you are a calculating woman, one of the greatest talents among all my apprentices. You are careful and cunning. Out of all the paladins of the past, nobody has ever reached your level. You should take pride in that, but you are still young. You're far too unfamiliar with opponents of your own level. Enough. The clearly provoked Hinata shouted back. But she understood Granville was egging her on. Thanks to her reflexive reaction, she had inadvertently admitted that her skill was stealing other people's powers. Granville had his hunches about it before, no doubt, but couldn't be sure about it. Now, with his social engineering skills, he knew it for a fact. Who's the cunning one here? Despite being wholly devoted to battle at the moment, Granville kept talking to Hinata. The carefree ease he exuded made her resent him even more. Even if I only took you once, that's all I need. I wouldn't look down on me that much. She made no secret of her hostility. After all, she had one more trick up her sleeve, force takeover. Now she was doing more than just copying someone else's skill. She was forcibly wresting it away from them, for good. It would let her strip away one of Granville's cards, and it all but guaranteed her victory. To Hinata, the preliminaries were over. She began a relentless attack, each sword strike a potentially lethal blow. At the same time, She continually activated Usurper, attempting to sap Granville's power. But no. My skill has to work against him. But the results, inapplicable. Proof that Granville's actual power was below Hinata's. Right now, she had grown far more powerful than before. It wouldn't be strange for her to surpass Granville, so these results were understandable. The only problem was that even when she seized a skill with force takeover, her final lifeline, Granville would just use that skill again the next instant. It happened over and over, no matter how many times she tried it. It was now impossible to hide her panic. She was definitely capable of taking Granville's skills and arts, but to Hinata, they were useless. She had already taken them once, and thus she gained nothing from them. If she could at least take away some of Granville's skills, there'd be a point to it, but why? Did Granville anticipate this and set up some kind of backup system? It wasn't out of the question. No regular person could do it, but she could picture an ex-hero like Granville pulling something like that off. What's wrong, Hinata? You look unwell. Granville, a sneering grin on her face, seemed to read Hinata's mind. It irritated her to no end. It seems you don't understand what I'm doing. The most important thing in battle is to carefully observe your opponent. Did you expect me to not take any sort of measures against you? If so, you sorely underestimated me, Hinata. Gay. Enough from you. I can see from your fighting style that you retain an advantage against foes stronger than you. Meanwhile, there are few examples of you seizing skills from weaker opponents. I say few and not zero, however, so you must have some kind of method for that. But the effort must exhaust you, does it not? You don't have to answer me. Looking at you, I'm now convinced my suppositions are correct. Being so completely seen through was a shock to Hinata. Somewhere in her mind, she was looking down upon Granville as a relic from the past, and now she wanted to punch herself over it. NGH. No, I doubt there's any point in continuing this. There was no reason to keep up her attempts at force takeover. With that decision made, Hinata retreated a distance away from Granville. Gathering her breath, she looked for a suitable opportunity. Her heart rate was setting a new record, the sweat from her brow pouring down. Then, with a thump, she could sense a small throbbing inside her, deep within her chest. What was that? I've tired myself out more than I thought. But not because I miscalculated this. Maybe I'm being attacked. Impartially observing herself, she realized that her exhaustion was stacking up more quickly than usual. Even all the force takeover attempts wouldn't have gassed her this much, but as Granville pointed out, her fatigue could no longer be ignored. You seem confused. You are powerful, Hinata, very powerful. That must be why you have so little experience with underhanded combat techniques such as this. What was that? It's simple. My actions are designed to make you overwork yourself. Little by little, I made you wear yourself down, believing that your attacks would succeed if you just pushed a little more, a little more. Listen to me. If you confront someone on the same level as you, whichever side tires the other out first wins. The more fatigued you are, the slower your decisions, and the wider you leave yourself open, just as you are personally experiencing right now. Exclamation mark. She wanted to deny Granville's claims, but she couldn't. Hinata had used her unique skill measurer to calmly analyze the battle situation, or so she thought. But Granville went one step beyond. She thought she was overly on her guard. Yes, she underestimated him a little, but she didn't let her guard down at all. So does it mean this man's stronger than me? That must be the case. It's the difference in level here, brought on by experience. She was now convinced and ready to admit to it. Even with Usurper, she couldn't take Granville's expertise. Now I understand. I see I'll have to get serious if I want to defeat you. That's right. Give me all you've got. Otherwise, trying to outclass me will be a dream beyond a dream for you. Hinata banished the ambient noise from her mind, focusing squarely on Granville. The sound disappeared. They were the only people present in the world. Here I come, Granville. I hope you learn from this, Hinata. Thus, Hinata and Granville's battle grew even more heated as time went on. The multi-layered disintegration unleashed by Diablo smashed into Rain's defense barrier, destroying pieces of it in succession, and then, the final ray pierced through her chest. Everything had gone the way he had calculated it, including the fact that Rain was still breathing. Heh. How weak. You were even less competition for me than Testarossa before her evolution. Testarossa. Never mind. It has nothing to do with you. But explain to me why you came here. Who would ever? Diablo was barking orders from high above, but Rain saw no reason to oblige him. Her predictable refusal irked him a little. He had clearly beaten Rain, but that didn't mean it was smooth sailing from now on. The perfectly formed insectoid he was having Xion and Ranga deal with really was the nemesis of all the demons. He was an unusual creature, one who lived in the space between the material and spiritual world. As a half-spiritual life form, whenever he slipped into the physical realm, he'd naturally assume a palpable form and become a burdensome invader. A group of them was extremely dangerous, requiring quick detection and extermination. Even worse, an insectoid attaining humanoid form was quite rare. Most examples settled into some more primitive form, finding themselves not quite suited for life in the material realm. But Raziel, this insectoid here, was in his final and complete state, and Diablo could see why even Xion and Ranga would find him a handful. Of course, Lady Xion works under Sir Rimuru. She has the potential to do well near anything to overcome her foe's strength, and with Sir Ranga around, there's no need to assume they'd lose. Still, though, Diablo could win. It would suit Rimuru more, he knew, if he eliminated all the question marks from the battle. Right now, going back and taking care of Raziel would be the right thing to do. But then another thought crossed his mind. What, he reasoned, if Rimuru deliberately left Raziel to Xion and Ranga? Diablo was flustered earlier, true. He detected Rain's arrival and didn't want her, or her cohorts, joining the fray, and the distraction had kept him from focusing on the battle. I thought it best at the time to drive her away as soon as possible, but was it, really? Perhaps Sir Rimuru wanted Lady Xion and Sir Ranga to experience battle against someone stronger than them? In that case, it wouldn't be right to intrude. That seemed plausible to Diablo. Truly, these were the thoughts of someone crazed for battle, a nonsensical conclusion that no regular person could ever imagine. But to Diablo, who placed Rimuru above all else, doing anything that went against Rimuru's intentions was a gross error. He wasn't some simple creature who assumed that fighting, and winning, was all that mattered. He could see that if Rimuru wanted to give them such a powerful foe, he truly wanted them to win, and learn from it. A difficult decision. This will require careful consideration on my part. Now Diablo's thoughts were starting to spiral in a pretty wrong direction. In front of Rain, the highest level of fighting force in the world, Diablo was thoroughly confused. Rimuru, of course, was thinking of nothing so idiotic. What he cared about was putting an end to this fracas, while keeping the children and orchestra safe. He had no obligation at all to see this as some kind of training situation for Xion and Ranga. So Diablo was wrong. But with that wrong idea in mind, he now had a new path to take. I was going to kill you, but I decided against it. What are you talking about? Threats won't work on me. No need for that, thank you. I don't need your act any longer, so come on out, he told the demon with a large hole in her chest. Rain didn't seem to understand this. In short time, however, her expression turned to panic. It wasn't the pale face from before as she faced defeat, but something rather more complex, a mixture of frustration and hatred. Noir. You only just evolved into a demon peer after all this time, and look at you. Just as set in your ways as always, I see. The true essence of strength does not lie in magicule counts. What's important is your level. I was taught to believe that differences in magicule energy do not make a decisive difference in battle ability. Ridiculous, replied Rain, her voice raspy as her body began to fade away. By the time she was fully gone, nothing but dust in the wind, a ray of light shot out from beyond the heavens, only to disappear and reveal two people, blue and red. Rain was the blue one, and she was kneeling before Guy Crimson, the strongest of demons, who had just entered the scene. "Hey, Noir. It's been a while." Rouge, or Guy Crimson now, I believe. "So you were here, too, then?" Diablo was wary of Guy from the start, even as Guy seemed to view him with nostalgia. "So you noticed Rain's ubiquital mist from the start? So why did you execute such a large-scale skill on her?" Diablo scowled, dreading this question. He had intended to feign ignorance of this skill, allowing her to divide up and regenerate her body with a second copy. His original plan was to make Guy and Rain, in her original body, believe that here was a man who wouldn't give them great trouble. If Diablo destroyed Rain's ubiquital mist body, got all cocky, and left the scene, Guy would no doubt lose hope in him, as well as lose interest in this whole battle. He'd leave on the spot, and thus Diablo could buy more time while hiding his full powers from him. Then he could go support Xion and the rest. That plan was now mothballed, thanks to Diablo's own desires. Even he could admit to it, now was no time to stage an act. Disintegration wouldn't be enough to defeat primal demons like us, would it? This parlor trick doesn't even qualify as a secret trump card. Wow, is that what you have to say? If I took a direct hit of that, not even I would survive unscathed, indeed. The same is true for me, if it were a direct hit. Heh heh. Ha 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 ha. K heh heh heh. Diablo's answer made Guy burst into self-satisfied laughter. Diablo did the same, still hoping to look unfazed. At this point, Rain was all but invisible to them. So why didn't you evolve until this point in time? You had no interest in dragging others down, unlike the other three. You could say they're dragging one another down, yes, but really, it's just a game they enjoy. You're right, though, that I have no part in it. As for myself, Guy, let me ask you, is there anyone in this world stronger than us? The question was similar to what Testarossa asked. It was a view shared across all the primal demons, Guy included. Bringing up common ground like this made it easier to stoke kinship with each other. No, there sure isn't. Maybe the true dragon, if I had to bring up a name, but that's more of a phenomenon of nature, you know. Even the true dragon wasn't a threat before Guy. If Feldin, the Star King dragon, was ever revived, that'd be another story, but as of right now, Guy was telling the truth. Diablo nodded. Precisely. So if I evolved while knowing that, any battle afterward would seem so boring. So one-sided, wouldn't you agree? He grinned at Guy. His battle-obsessed brain was working hard as usual. I see. Guy, for his part, seemed convinced. Maybe he would deny it, but the two of them were actually fairly alike, two kindred spirits, when it came to this topic. So did the slime give you a change of heart? Sir Rimuru. I'll ask you to not refer to him as slime, please. All right. So is that Rimuru guy the reason you evolved? Diablo's adjusting the pace of this conversation to suit his tastes irked Guy, but complaining wouldn't help advance things. He hated playing by the beat of a different drummer, but this time, he chose to make an exception. Very good, muttered Diablo. The growth of Sir Rimuru, you see, is a constant surprise to me. I wouldn't be afraid to call it evolution in action. His looks are charming, his soul brimming with refinement. And what's more? Is this going to go on for a while? ? Diablo met Guy's stare, as if to say, what did you expect? I don't need to hear about Rimuru. Let's talk about you, all right? This annoyed Diablo a bit, but perhaps remembering the urgency of the situation around them, he acquiesced. TCH. Well, all right. Let us return to the topic at hand. Sir Rimuru's compatriots, as well, are changing rapidly from day to day, and I think seeing that has influenced me. That much? This chat seemed to be tiring Guy out, but he still had the wherewithal to scrutinize what Diablo just said. Indeed. I fear that if I do not make an effort of my own, even I might be left in the dust. And in that sort of environment, there is no longer any reason to set limits to my growth. A fascinated Guy nodded. Now things were going at his pace again. He unleashed an evil grin. It does sound like Rymuru's got the nations to the west under his control now, yeah, but I'm sorry to say, my own people are wrecking the place right now, I think. To Guy, this was just some playful harassment of the human race. That was his intention, at least, but to Rimuru, so driven to play nice with humanity, it must have been a serious crisis. That's what made Guy mention it. He could see that none of this surly behavior would work on Diablo, but if he could get under Rymuru's skin, he knew that'd have its effect on Diablo as well. Thus, if his minions happened to be messing around in the Western nations at the moment, he thought he could take advantage. The sight of Diablo, someone who fought evenly with Guy in the past, calling someone his master put Guy off a bit. So he wanted to mess with him, stir him up. With Raziel gone from his usual post up north, the Western nations were vulnerable. Much of it, like Guy warned, was no doubt looking like hell on earth by now. Diablo wouldn't be able to do anything about it, and as Guy saw it, not even Rimuru could take action, but Diablo just gave him his trademark snicker instead. K-heh-heh. You thought Sir Rimuru didn't see it coming? It has all been taken care of. His wisdom, you see, is deeper than the ocean, his perception giving him insight into all things. Guy thought that would agitate Diablo at least a little. It didn't. In fact, he chose this moment in time to revert back to praising Rimuru. He must be sick in the head, he thought, facing no choice but to accept it. Ah. Yes, very interesting. You think he's surpassing even my expectations? Yes, of course. For Sir Rimuru, that is a given. Diablo continued to verbally taunt Guy about Rimuru for a while, despite Rimuru not actually being there. If he was, he would no doubt shout, "What the hell are you doing?" Only Rain was listening, biting her lip, but Guy and Diablo were wholly ignoring her as they continued. Meanwhile, the Western nations were facing a danger unprecedented in their history. The Sidra Frontier Defense Force, always busily handling the demon threat, suddenly found its main offense gone. No longer able to push back the demons who visited their territory regularly, they sent out an emergency request for reinforcements. Ridiculous. The demon forces are advancing southward. What could Margrave Sidra possibly be doing? We can't think about that right now. Every nation needs to deploy its troops and build a layered set of defense bases. Otherwise, we'll have a marauding army of demons right here, in the capital of Inglesia. All the representatives at this emergency council session were in an uproar. Being composed of councillors from all its member nations, the Council of the West held a great deal of political power, but when it came to sudden crises, there was always going to be time wasted. That was the biggest disadvantage of a majority vote system. The defense of the northern regions was left entirely in the hands of Margrave Sidra of Inglesia. It was a large, powerful kingdom, and still a good half of its military strength was stationed up north, forming a bulwark against Guy Crimson. They were joined by several members of the Crusaders, as well as a team of A-ranked adventurers from the Free Guild, which functioned as a subsidiary of the council. That was how important a defensive line this was. Losing it could be a matter of life and death for humanity, and thus the panic around the council chamber was understandable. Currently, they were just barely hanging on to the base defined as their last line of defense, and even that was thanks to the paladins and adventurers stationed there. Considering the situation, they needed to deploy troops there immediately, but time would not allow it. This wasn't a monolithic dictatorship, it was a federation of independent nations, and each representative needed permission from their home state. The only thing the council could do right away was call for emergency backup from the Free Guild. They could also ask the council's host nation of Inglesia to deploy its regular forces, but the request was likely to fall on deaf ears, since it'd leave the capital more exposed. Besides, Inglesia was already shouldering the burden of defending the North. Nobody would fault it for asking other nations for support in an emergency. Like the lesser-known council members were currently shouting, it was time to create a federated, multi-nation force. The problem, however, was that all these disparate armies would be led by the brand-new member nation of Tempest, the land of monsters. The council had unanimously voted for it, so there was no room to complain about it now, but leaving precious military resources in the hands of monsters presented a thorny dilemma to many councillors. "Order, all of you, please," shouted the chairman. The noise gradually died down as all eyes turned toward him. "Right now, we can't afford to waste a single minute. Instead of debating among ourselves, we must immediately contact our home nations and have them send forces our way. The Demon Lord Raimuru's representative, Lady Testarossa, is in attendance today, and I understand she is well versed in military affairs. If Sir Raimuru appointed her, I am sure leaving our forces in her hands will not be an issue." The chairman's words were greeted with some sporadic disagreement, but no one stood up and spoke on the record against it. With no better ideas forthcoming, lodging complaints now would only make things worse. Now all eyes were on Testarossa. If the council was raising an army, she'd be its de facto commander. It was only expected that everyone was appraising her abilities now. She was a young woman, a rarity among the councillors, and a beauty the likes of which one rarely lays eyes upon. Many councillors had the impression that Tempest featured a lot of pretty faces, but no one was foolish enough to say as much here. Everyone's focus was on whether this woman Testarossa truly had any power. It may have been an exaggeration to say, but on this debate rode not only the future of each councillor, but the future of humankind itself. Lady Testarossa, began one councillor, finally drumming up the courage to speak. I fully recognize that asking this might be considered rude, but are you capable of commanding a military force?" Testarossa gave him a gleaming smile. "Do not despair, councillors. My master, Sir Raimuru, has ordered me to defend all the nations that belong to the Council of the West. In fact, my own personnel have already been deployed across the land. And also, Moss. Yes. According to the latest information, reliable reinforcements have now arrived in the north." What? Is that true? The councillors didn't even have the time to realize that Moss was likely one of Testarossa's assistants. What he had to say sent the hall into another furor. So what reinforcements are these, Lady Testarossa? Moss. Yes, my lord. A dragon airship from the sorceress dynasty of Thalion is currently on its way to the area. I am sure that High Elf's forces are more than capable of dispatching the low-level demons threatening the region. You heard him, Chairman. And, Moss, she is more than just a High Elf, she is a sworn friend of Lord Raimuru. My apologies. Don't make that mistake again, all right. From now on, you will refer to her as Lady Elmesia. Why yes, my lord. Moss withered under the gaze of Testarossa's crimson eyes. He turned pale, realizing he could no longer behave like the demon world prince he once was. Angering Testarossa would lead to his ruin, and even worse, disrespecting someone Raimuru recognized as a friend was an error he couldn't forgive himself for. Testarossa, likely realizing that, let him off with just a warning this time. If Moss didn't correct his insolent ways, she'd no doubt punish him for it the next instant. That applied even to him, a great demon who had served Testarossa for ages. She was a woman possessed of kindness and ruthlessness in equal measure. The council she sat in was a scene of chaos. The words she and Moss exchanged provided an overview of the situation, but there was still no evidence to back them up. Opinion was clearly split on whether to trust them. I will speak for my nation when I say that I trust Lady Testarossa. Indeed, our nation's of the same opinion. I want Lady Testarossa to command our forces. It would be the height of irresponsibility. If something should happen, it will be far too late then. Exactly. If this talk of reinforcements turns out to be a ruse, the demons will trample all over human civilization. Unity was now in short supply across the council as the debate continued to heat up. Testarossa calmly watched matters unfold, listening instead of offering her own opinion. After a little time had passed, though, she suddenly spoke. "Ah, it was you. I thought you might be here." The sudden statement invited confusion among the councillors, many failing to understand what she was talking about. Only one among them, the person her eyes were presently aimed at, broke out in a cold sweat, the colour draining from his face. It was Prince Johann Rostia of the Kingdom of Rostia. "What are you saying about me?" he asked, trying his best to hide his apprehension, but Testarossa simply arched her lips upward. It made him lose his patience. "I knew monsters weren't to be trusted. Only we can step up to defend humankind. Guards! Guards, come out now!" He was now dramatically shouting, sweat running down his face in a portrait of despair. Meanwhile, Testarossa's smile only broadened. Following Johann's orders, soldiers began to pour into the council hall. Some of Johann's personal guards were among them, their presence putting him more at ease. Testarossa elegantly played with her hair as the other councillors sat there, bewildered. Johann's behavior was beyond illogical. Even if Testarossa did have some malevolent intent, any unlawful violence would never be allowed in a hall of laws like the council. No matter how important a figure Johann was in here, such arbitrary behavior would never be smiled upon. "Your name was Johann Rostia, right? Prince of Rostia? A very high figure, aren't you? What of it? Flattery will get you nowhere." "Sir Johann, who were you talking to in a magical call just now?" "What? And why did you send out an order to have this nation's defensive barrier destroyed? How did you? Would you mind explaining?" Testarossa was relaxed, as if chatting over tea, as she painted Johann into a corner. The other councillors looked on in awe. Now was no time for confusion. They all immediately ordered their staff to check on the state of Englisia's barrier. But before they had an answer, the entire land around them began to rumble. It's true? Destroy the barrier? If you do that, there's no defense against the monsters. We'll lose countless citizens. What could possibly be the meaning of this, Sir Johann? Answer me." When confronted with someone in a panic, most people are hardwired to either fall into a similar panic or take a step back and calm down. Johann was the latter. Realizing that his plans were complete, he let a relaxed smile creep upon his face. "Sir Girard, the barrier is gone now. It's time to call them out." The councillors, seeing the figure Johann was addressing, were startled. It's the head of the Sons of the Veld, that mercenary gang. Girard. The Velds connected with Sir Johann, too? Not just Gabon? But what's Sir Johann going to do with them? Ignoring these cries, Girard walked up to Johann, standing beside him. "Yes," he said, "our contract is now ratified. Thank you for your cooperation." "Oh, not at all. The last hope of our mutual master Granville Rot so happens to match your mission as well. No need to hold back now. If you're going to raise this land, be as showy as you can about it." Now Johann's laughter rang loud across the hall, the light of reason no longer visible in his eyes. His face was transformed into something fiendish as he revealed his true colors to all. At long last, the councillors realized Johann had betrayed them, but the kingdom's defense barrier was already destroyed. And as they gradually understood this, despair began to reign. "Have at it, Ein. You got it." The woman Girard called Ein began to cast a spell, a summon spell. Ein was an elementalist and the leader of Green Fury, the team that made it far into the dungeon not long ago. But this was no spirit she was summoning this time. It was, in fact, the very deity the Sons of the Veld worshipped as their spiritual leader. A large, oval-shaped transport gate appeared, a living personification of power stepping through it. It was a beautiful girl with green hair and a crimson-red-made outfit, but everyone witnessing it could sense how dangerous she was. After all, despite her attractive looks, the aura she unleashed plunged the entire hall into hopelessness. The magical inquisitors who ran in, sensing the danger, were frozen in place. Their instincts told them that any movement could very well kill them. This was Misery the demon peer, stepping out from the darkness. Despite the overwhelming despair, Johann looked supremely pleased with himself. He recalled the last time Granville called for him, after Gabon's fall reduced the 5 elders to 4, Granville Rotso of the Rotso family, Margrave Cedra of Inglesia, King Doran of the Kingdom of Doran, and himself. They had all come together at Granville's bidding, and he had a fearsome final order for them. Maribel is dead, and with that, the Rotsos will likely meet their doom soon. Perhaps, depending on how one looks at it, we could reconcile with the monsters after all. If they show no interest in human territories like Lady Luminous, it may even be possible to coexist. But the demon lord Rimuru is seeking nothing less than complete rule over humankind. He must be stopped at all costs. But, Sir Granville, any attempts along those lines are doomed if we have no realistic way of resisting him. I understand what Maribel was concerned about, but if we've lost our Chaos Dragon, there's nothing we can do. We have Raziel under our control, but we can hardly move him around. Doran was being realistic, with Cedra offering his support and Johann in agreement. Johann knew well the threat Maribel posed, as young as she was, and the demon lord Rimuru's victory over her filled him with fear. For now, he thought, our best plan is to pretend to do Rimuru's bidding as we build up our power. But Granville, perhaps sensing this internal weakness within Johann, fired back. Have you fools all lost your nerve? No matter how much chaos is in the world, no matter how much we sacrifice, we humans must retain the right to rule over ourselves. Am I wrong? His sheer vigor took Johann and the others aback. Granville rarely wore his emotions on his sleeve, which made his deep-seated anger and rage all the more clear to them. I am tired. If this keeps up, the human world will perish and the demon lord Rimuru will rule over us all. If that is the fate we're doomed to face, then why not stage one more final resistance? You may do whatever you choose, but I'm going to take one last risk. Once he was done, he gave his 3 companions some time to consider their choices. Either they could follow Granville's orders and resist their fates, or they could align themselves with Rimuru. Only Doran among them decided to separate from the group, choosing to resist as he normally did, on his own turf, to keep the Rotso name alive. My territory is located far from the scene of conflict. As a survivor from the Rotso family, I will observe and care for your true and correct history. Granville nodded at Doran. Very well. This will likely be the final time, so I say this to you as my final request. It may be too late, but I wish there to be no ill will. Doran listened to Granville's resigned words, tears in his eyes, and then he departed, alone. Johann, too, realized this would likely be their final meeting. But he had no regrets. Considering the suffering Granville must have gone through as the Rotso family patriarch, joining him on the path to almost certain death seemed a perfectly reasonable proposition. Cedra, who also stayed, was of the same opinion. So the 3 of them worked out their final operation. Granville would use the Guild Grand Master Yuki to stage one last challenge against Luminous. Cedra would abandon his northern defenses and allow the demons up there to march for the western nations. Johann would destroy Inglesia's defensive mechanisms and kill the core members of the council. Tempest's representative would likely be among them, and with her murder, they'd even be able to stage a confrontation between the demon lords Guy and Rimuru. Once they pulled all of that off, human society would be in shambles. Doran, left behind, could opt to rebuild by himself, or maybe another nation would lead the way. Perhaps humankind would find some charismatic savior to guide them. Granville had some other motivations in mind as well, it seemed, but that didn't matter to Johann. But you're truly sure about this? I am asking you both, in essence, to die for me. What are you saying? As a member of the Rotso family, my heart is always with you, my master. As is mine. I cannot join your frail body on its final journey, but at least allow me to fulfill my duty to you. Johann and Cedra didn't hesitate to answer Granville. It was quite the opposite of what Johann thought a moment ago. But he had a good reason for that. Everyone in the Rotzos took the absolute rule of Granville as a given. They depended on him. It was all but impossible to imagine prosperity without his patronage. So if Granville was now venturing forth to his final battlefield, even the previously indecisive Johann was ready for it. I'm sure it's just as difficult for King Doran to bear. He must feel helpless, like a child abandoned by his parents. By comparison, Johann counted himself as a happy man. Until the final moment, he'd be able to take pride as a member of the Rotzo family. So as ordered by Granville, Johann made contact with the Sons of the Veld, a demon-affiliated group he and Gabon were familiar with, and won their promise to join in the effort. Their mission, to summon Vert herself and plunge the world into chaos. And for the Sons of the Veld, like any paramilitary group dreaming of a world at war they could profit from, it was the greatest, and most self-centered, thing they could ever